What taxes do you have to pay on your investments if you live in Europe? In this video, I'll show you exactly how to find that out without paying €1,000 to some tax advisor. Hi, I'm Tom Crosshill. I'm a professional investor and I've spent hundreds of hours researching investment taxes in 34 European countries. And in every single country, there are tax rules which can save you a lot of time, stress, and money. For example, many people don't know that in Spain, index mutual funds are better for taxes than ETFs. Now, of course, if in doubt, always talk with a tax advisor. But in this video, let's see what you can find out without paying anybody. Here are a few key concepts that you need to understand. First, tax residence. I get these emails all the time. Tom, I'm from Estonia, but I live in Denmark. In which country is it more advantageous for me to pay taxes? And listen, it's not up to you. You can't just choose to pay taxes in Cyprus because Cyprus has low taxes if you don't live there. Where you need to pay taxes is determined by your tax residence. And there are strict rules for figuring out in which country you are a tax resident. So in a second, I'll show you exactly how to figure that out. The second concept you need to understand is capital gains. Let's say you buy some Microsoft stock and you got lucky, the price went up, and then you sold at a profit. That profit is called your capital gains. And in virtually all European countries, you have to pay tax on that. There are a few exceptions, a few countries which don't have capital gains taxes, and those include Cyprus, Switzerland, Belgium, and a few others. The next concept is distributions. Whenever you get dividends or interest from your investment, that's called a distribution, and in almost all European countries, that is taxed. In many countries, the tax rate is the same as for capital gains, but in some cases, it can also be quite different. Okay, so now we've looked at tax residence, capital gains, and distributions. There are many other kinds of taxes in Europe as well. You've got wealth taxes, exit taxes, transaction taxes, deemed taxes, and others. But you should always start with these three, okay? Now let's do a case study. Let's assume that you are Martin, a French citizen who lives and works in Berlin, and you want to figure out what taxes do you need to pay on your investments. A good starting point is the worldwide tax summary database at taxsummaries.pwc.com. So if you're from France and you live in Germany, you might want to look at the country briefings for both France and Germany. As one example, let's just look at Germany. Okay, so I picked Germany from the list of countries. If you don't live in Germany, the exact rules will be different, but you can use the same process to figure out how taxes work in your country. Obviously, the first thing we need to figure out is in which country you need to pay taxes. So let's look at this section on tax residence in Germany, all right? So Martin lives in Germany. He wants to figure out if that's where he needs to pay taxes. And here we discover the rules. Generally, individuals are deemed to be resident if they have a dwelling in Germany that they use. Okay, so that's one criterion. Or if they have habitual abode in Germany, which usually means you spend at least half of the year in Germany. All right. Now, in Martin's case, he is living in Berlin, he's working in Berlin, he is almost certainly a German tax resident. Now, there can be some exceptions to this. If Martin has little kids and maybe a wife living in Paris, then the French government might want to claim Martin as a French tax resident. So in more complicated cases, you do have to study the issue more closely. But assuming that's not the case, assuming Martin's whole life is in Germany these days, well, he will almost certainly be a German tax resident. So that covers tax residence. We have figured out that Martin's tax residence is Germany. Next, let's figure out what taxes Martin has to pay on his investments. The PwC database isn't really optimized for investment taxes, so to find this information, you might have to click around. The first section I would usually look at is taxes on personal income. This will usually explain how different kinds of personal income are taxed. And in many cases, this section will also have information about capital gains or distributions taxes. So let's take a look. We have something about net income, taxable income, surcharges, trade income tax, local and state income tax. Okay, nothing about investments. So then the next section I would look at is income determination. In many cases, this is where you find the investment information. And actually, if you scroll down, you see there's a section on capital gains. All right, so let's see what it says. Capital gains from financial investments are subject to a flat tax rate of 25% plus 5.5% solidarity surcharge. So that's in total 26.375% plus church tax if applicable. This is a peculiarity in the German system where churches also get funded through taxes, although as far as I know, you can opt out of it. So if Martin is not particularly religious, if he sells a stock with €100 profit, he would then pay 26.38 euros in taxes. But there are more details to come. For example, this says capital gains qualify for the investor's allowance of 1,000 euros per taxpayer and year. Okay? So if Martin only earns 100 euros of profit in a year, he would not need to pay any taxes. Okay? He only needs to start paying taxes on profit which exceeds 1,000 euros in the year. And another important detail is that special partial tax exemptions apply on capital gains from the sale of mutual fund units. Okay? And this is an example of where this database is not detailed enough. Okay? This is why in many countries we needed to pay thousands of euros for tax researchers, because there are many exemptions, exceptions, special rules around specific investments which can be really important to know. Okay, and in a moment, I will show you how you can research all these special rules. Now let's move on to distributions taxes. I'm going to scroll down and look at dividend income and interest income. So if you look at these two sections, you see that basically the rules are the same as for capital gains. The effective tax rate is 26.375%, and there is this 1,000 euro annual allowance. So you get 1,000 euros total. It doesn't matter, maybe part of it comes from capital gains, part of it comes from distributions. But if your investment profit is up to 1,000 euros, you pay nothing. And then as you go above that, you start paying taxes. In short, if Martin received 100 euros in dividends from Coca-Cola stock, he would pay 26.38 euros in tax. Although there are some special rules around that. For example, if Martin can prove that tax was already partially paid in America on these dividends, he may be able to pay less in Germany. Okay, so at this point, we've gotten a lot out of this PwC database, but it doesn't give us all the information that we need to really make good choices about our investments. So we need some other sources. Another high-level source for tax information is the Ernst & Young Worldwide Personal Tax and Immigration Guide. You can Google it and download this PDF. Now, as a PDF, it's much harder to use, but it can have some useful information. But if I'm looking for specific information about investment taxes on ETFs or stocks or crypto or some other investment, then these high-level guides are usually not enough. So then my next stop is our good old friend, Google. So let's say Martin wants to invest in some ETFs. You want to search for ETF tax rules in Germany. But you may have noticed that not everybody in Germany speaks English. So in actuality, you might want to search for the German equivalent. Okay? In this case, it will be ETF Steuern Deutschland. Forgive the pronunciation, please. And then we have a bunch of results. And you have to be aware that many of the websites that come up could be misleading or not reliable. So I would usually scroll down and look for something that looks trustworthy. And in this case, I see the iShares website. So iShares is a part of BlackRock, the biggest fund provider in the world. So their website should be quite reliable. I would click on the iShares website and then hit Google Translate, of course, being aware that there can be translation issues, and look for the information that I need. For example, from PwC, we know that there are these partial exemptions. So here I see there's a question, what does partial exemption mean? And I can find the information right here. Now, this is a lot of text. I'm not going to read all of it, but the basic idea is that in Germany, if you buy a mutual fund or ETF, and this fund invests primarily in stocks, the capital gains tax that you pay is reduced significantly. So for example, if Martin buys an ETF which invests at least half of its assets in the stock market, and then he sells the ETF and makes a 100 euro profit, instead of the full 26.38 cents of tax, he could pay 30% less. So checking my math, that's 18 euros and 47 cents. Now, Martin lives in Germany, a big country with lots of investors. And even so, there are many tax nuances which it can be quite challenging to figure out. In most other European countries, the amount of information that you can find online is more limited, and doing this research can be a little more tricky. Okay. Now, if you want a shortcut, I do have a tax workshop which includes detailed country tax briefings for index and ETF investors. So if that sounds interesting, check out the link in the description. But otherwise, start with the PwC website, then Google investment taxes in the local language, look for articles from banks or lawyers, and if all else fails, get a tax advisor. Now, tax advisors do charge between 200 euros an hour to maybe 500 euros an hour in more expensive countries like Switzerland or Austria. But if there's a question that you cannot figure out, that's money well spent, because setting up your taxes right in the beginning can be a big difference for your investment success. And here's a bunch of taxes that we didn't cover, so make sure to research those as well. Or if you want me to cover one of those in a separate video, just let me know in the comments.